Hey everyone, what's going on? Everyone had a good lunch? Yeah, alright. Okay, so my name is Iftach and Amit. Actually, this is probably one of the only places in the world where I can say Iftach and not worry about people going like, what? So, feel free to use either Iftach or Ian. And I'm going to talk about cyber war and cyber crime. Now, if you're allergic to the terminology, cyber, that you've been hearing all around the interwebs all the time, you can leave now. Or even better, make a suggestion. Okay, we're all looking for new terminologies that we can use without fearing of being, like media whores. This is my opinion. Okay, I do have a day job with a fancy business title. I'm VP BizDev for Security Art. But this is my research, kind of my pet peeves and stuff I've been working on over the past couple of years, looking into cybercrime, into cyber warfare, capabilities, defense, attack, and this is kind of a pullback to look at the whole picture. And we'll get to that in a second. So this does not represent anything formal, official, don't sue me, and so on and so forth. This is what we're going to go through today. We're going to, in order to talk about cybercrime and cyber war, we'll put some definitions and things in perspective, and then we're going to look at history and see how do cybercrime and cyber war interact, which is kind of interesting, and the point of this whole presentation. We'll just do the connecting the dots, a very simple experiment to see how these two things connect together, and we're going to talk, if time permits, a little bit about the future in the sense of what can we do with this whole connecting the dots thing. Okay? One important thing, if you have any comments, questions, criticism, just don't save it to the last minute. You have these little rockets that they gave you. If you need me to show you how to use them, it's pretty easy. Just shoot it at me, grab my attention. I'll and call bullshit. I'm more than willing. I'm not going to bite unless you really ask. But just tell me out, okay? A little bit about myself, what actually brought me here and gave me the permission, the questionable permission to talk to you guys. I'm a computer science major, a bachelor degree. I'm a hacker by trade or education, I guess. I'm a researcher. I used to do a lot of research for security companies in the past, focusing mainly on web security, malware analysis, and so on and so forth. I was actually on the other side of the fence, which means I used to manage development and try to build software that sustains and lasts, blah, 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 but it's much more fun breaking it or taking a different look at it. And in my spare time, I do some work for the Israeli Air Force, reserve duty, free work. So that's about all I can give you. I'm not a CISSP. I have zero. Thank you. Now I can go out. I have zero certifications, just criminal mind. As I said before, if you see me do any funky shit.
It's my belt Turkish. Oh, Tommy, there's a gun in your trousers. What's a gun doing in the trousers? It's for protection. Protection from what? Well, the German.
Yeah. I'm not trying to scare anyone. If this seems scary, trust me, it's all based on fact. If you find these facts not to be factual, you have, the rockets and all that stuff. So I really try to kind of get all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt factors out of this presentation and stick to something I can stand behind. By the way, there's a lot of stuff that you might have said, well, you missed this, you missed that. I'm not putting anything here that I can't actually say I saw this, like a packet capture or something I can really stand behind and say, you know what, that's for real. So if you do know of additional material that you can share, that's like OSINT, please do share. And this presentation is going to become just a little more awesome than the kind of mediocre it is now. So just some background. Last year I did a lot of research concerning cybercrime. We tracked like criminal groups, saw how they interact, and our main focus was on trying to find out how the business model works. Not just the technical attack vector, infection vector, persistency, blah, 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 that everyone was talking about, just about the financial model, so to speak, of it. And we ran across a lot of them, data that were selling and trading, which kind of made sense in the, criminal underground. But we also ran across things like this. This was found on a criminally operated server, along with crap loads of financial data, personal information, passwords, credit card numbers, and so on and so forth. And this doesn't really seem like something you can sell. Okay? This seems like something that's part of like a drill, a tactical maneuver involving fancy toys like F-16s and GPS coordinates of targets and accuracy of bombing runs, which again, if you really try to look hard, I don't think you can really find a buyer for this, like, openly. And this is finally, again, this is like a screenshot of an application that was, again, found as a whole on that server that was stolen from whoever owns this application. This application is responsible for managing an air, tactical air scenery, whatever it is, controlling airplanes and ammunition runs and, accuracy and all that fancy stuff, which is, again, doesn't fit into the criminal model. So one of the outputs of my last year's research was, let's try to kind of LoJack this data and try to track it and try to see where it pops up. So who's trading it, who's really requesting this information, or who this information might get to, and that got me to build the talk that I'm currently giving. So that was kind of the appetizer. We'll see what came out of that that information from before. Let's start talking about, again, cybercrime, cyber war. Start easy, all right? Because I know you're after lunch and you're kind of heavy. So easy question. What is this? Bullet hole. Thank you. I didn't have to reach for my little missile. It's a bullet hole. This is what we're looking at most of the time as security people. We're looking at vulnerabilities and exploits and technical stuff and assembly and reverse engineering, blah, 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 blah. Great. Been there, done that. It's very interesting. Still do it once in a while. What we don't see is what that bullet hole is in context of. Okay? It's the same bullet hole. Could be part of a criminal, kind of a drive-by, or it could be part of a war. Could be a bystander, could be a target. We don't really look at that information. And in this talk, I hope, again, to make that bridge, to do that zoom out, and kind of realize what we're looking at and what's the context in which it is. So let's look at the two contexts that are on the screen, crime and war. If you look at like a general properties of each one, they're basically the same. Funding may be a little different, but there's like backing. There's a lot of funding into it. The skill set and expertise required to conduct cybercrime and cyber warfare are kind of the same. And as we're going to see in the future, in a few minutes, they kind of interact with each other. The only interesting thing about crime is that there's a market for exploits as opposed to self-creation when you were talking about cyber war. But that's about it. Start with cyber war. And this is the Wikipedia definition for cyber war. I'm going to read it out. It's cyber war is the use of computers and the internet in conducting warfare in cyberspace. This is all fine and dandy, but it's just not true, and we'll see why. Most people that talk about cyber war, or a lot of people that talk about cyber war, like to say it didn't happen, right? There is no cyber war. It's a famous quote from, who recognizes this gentleman? Fellow Americans? That's Schmidt? Yeah, that's Howard Schmidt. He is the cyber czar in the US. He's responsible for everything cyber under the president. And like a week after he got the job, he was quoted, in an interview, he just said, there is no cyber war. Like, this is the best career move ever. But still there, And usually people say, well, there's no cyber war except for, and they start, Estonia, Georgia, Titan Rain, maybe India, Google, Adobe. I mean, there's like a list of except for. Yeah, you can just throw stuff at and still say there is no cyber war. So again, it's a little kind of fucked up, but again, we'll see how just by connecting some dots and looking at past events and events that are currently occurring, we can try to start zooming out and see really what's going on. Cyber war is not just state versus state, right? It's not just Kremlin versus Pentagon. It's not just spy versus spy, super covert, hacker foo, zero-day dropping shit. But it will always, in my mind, again, in my opinion, include some kind of civilian casualties. Okay? Civilian infrastructure is going to always be at stake. Even if it's like a precise targeting, we're going to see some kind of civilian infrastructure at stake too. So who are the players? This was stolen and given by permission from McAfee from their virtual criminology report for 2009. And this image kind of depicts the 5 countries developing advanced offensive cyber capabilities. You can see the usual suspects, US and Russia, China, of course, France, go Europe, and this tiny dot like here in the middle, that's Israel. In this case, this is the only case, by the way, that size doesn't matter. Okay, but in in this talk, I'm going to kind of shuffle the cards a little bit, and as I said before, I'm only going to talk about stuff that I can actually see and research. So I switched France, sorry guys, to Iran. So let's see what kind of background we have in those countries. The US is fairly well documented. Okay, you can read all kinds of shit from like official websites, from the government. There are a lot of reports on cyber drills that they've been doing, and again, it's the usual suspects. Major recruiting for the NSA, CIA, FBI, other government entities, military is recruiting a lot. There's been the U.S. Cyber Command that has been established under General Keith Alexander that kind of merged all the current cyber commands under one general. And other, 3-letter agencies. This is my favorite. It's kind of hard to see. It's called CAT. Anyone know who CAT is? What CAT is? It's the Cyber Action Team, guys. It's the FBI's Cyber Action Team. They get cyber action. I get cyber action on my laptop as well, but it's... all right. Russia. Russia is very interesting. After there's been a whole lot of organizational changes, as they say over there. So just to set things straight and who does who. We've got the GRU, which is the main intelligence directorate of the Russian armed forces. By the way, their logos, awesome. The U.S. wish that they would get those kind of logos. We've got the SVR, which was kind of a split from a previous agency that takes care of foreign intelligence. We've got the FSB, which used to be the KGB. Okay, they do federal security services, like kind of internal. But just like in Russia, everyone does whatever they want. And my favorite is an entity that is officially called the Center for Research of Military Strength of Foreign Countries. It's like, I mean, why shit around? It's just, let's just put exactly what we do as the name. Additionally, something very interesting that we'll see later, they have several national youth associations. I don't know why associations dropped out of my presentation, but in short, they're called Nashi in Russian. And they're basically like Boy Scouts on steroids. They're highly like maneuverable by the political party and kind of a quick and dirty workforce that can be applied to do several interesting things. China, good old China. Gotta love China. In China, everything is very simple, fairly well documented, surprisingly as well. Everything runs under the PLA, military. You've got the fourth department, the General Staff Department, for electronic countermeasures, which is offense. You've got the third GSD for SIGINT, which is the defense. Everything, again, there's a great report by Northrop Grumman. Wow. You should read this. It's kind of like light, night reading material. Very interesting and very eye-opening. And can, again, actually be backed up and researched. And yes, Tide and Rain happened, and the history. I'm not going to stay on this slide too much. Iran, not a lot of information, but since we're talking about some kind of a very specific form of governments, it becomes very simple. There's one telecommunication infrastructure company, which is called the Telecommunication Infrastructure Company. It's a government telecom monopoly, so the government controls it, and basically they report to the Iranian armed forces on everything that they want to connect. This has been their connectivity rate over the past few years. You can see the spike in, and this is fiber optics running into and out of Iran, which is internet. So the armed forces control everything, great firewalling, great control over content, and you know how much Iranians love Twitter, okay? And again, we'll talk about this in a few seconds. Israel, last and not least. I'm not going to be able to tell you a lot about this. This is mostly Googleable stuff. I love Googleable. Most of the cyber stuff is done under the IDF, which is adding a lot of cyber attack capabilities. Again, Google it, find all the articles, a lot of interesting information. In the IDF, we have C4Is, which is Command Control Communications Computers, and intelligence. Like, I want it all. In every corps. So we have like intelligence C4I, Navy C4I, Air Force C4I, and the foot soldiers C4I. Staffing is mostly homegrown because, I don't know if you know, but every citizen in Israel have to serve the army since the second they turn 18. So a lot of training going on inside the military. Obviously there's like picking and choosing before people join in, so you're not going to find a lot of googly-eyed geeks running in the desert. They're probably going to get picked up to do C4I stuff. And yes, Mossad, again, it's not a big secret, I guess, anymore. They have a website. They actually have a website in English as well. Look for the job section, not in English, but in Hebrew. You can figure it out just by rolling your mouse over the menu, and use Google Translate. A lot of interesting information will pop up when you look at what they're looking for in terms of recruiting people. Okay? Smart, and it's on the internet. I'm not like revealing country secrets. All right. Quick overview of attack. Cyber war, in my mind, is not what the Wikipedia definition is. Cyber war, for me, is part of a global kind of strategic move. So my definition is highly selective targeting of military and critical resources in conjunction with a kinetic attack. Okay? You're not going to blow up the country just by pinging it or finding an OD on something. There's always going to be something kinetic involved, be it planes bombing stuff, or ground troops moving in, or spooks popping up in strange places. Again, it's a strategic move. It's synchronized with someone on the ground, or just a massive DDoS. Just blank out an area, deny service to telecommunication, to other, I don't know, government services, civil services, for political propaganda, for crowd control, for changing, the public opinion, or preventing the public from reaching, from getting more information. Okay, so this is kind of my definition of cyber war, and mostly cyber war attack. On the defense side, yeah, what? Yeah, I said I'm going to focus on 5 different countries. I mean, I left out France and added Iran. I don't have a lot of data on France, and I have much more on Iran. Okay, sorry if I hurt anyone. It's just yeah. Yeah. Okay. We can remind me that when we talk about like the talking about the future slide. Okay. I almost agree with you. Most cases you will need some kind of physical interaction as well. Most nuclear reactors don't have an IP, a public IP address. All right. So, yeah. Kinetic and cyber. Well, I'll talk about it. When we talk about cyber capabilities and cyber actions, cyber action team, they can last again for a long time as in preparation for a kinetic event. Some people categorize this under like cyber espionage or whatever it is. But again, it is usually a part of a bigger plan. What I'm trying to say, it doesn't stand by itself. Okay? And move on to defense. Yeah, we're good. All right. Defense. Defense is kind of easy because we're talking about massive things. So, as we said, targets are never just military. There's always going to be civilian. So it's really hard to defend them, which makes availability and integrity of the services like a big part of it, which makes just shutting down services or shutting down access to critical services part of a defensive maneuver, right? If my server is smoking and about to melt, and I don't want to shut it down because I'm going to lose data or integrity or something like that, I might as well start shutting down access to the server to lower the load, okay? So that's a valid defensive move from a nation point of view, and we'll see that sometimes in past events. Cybercrime. Let's run a little faster. If you don't see this and you're talking about cybercrime, you're doing it very, very wrong. Okay? You're just dealing with stupidness of some sort. Script kiddies, I don't know, people fucking around. Track the money. If you don't see the money, you're not looking at cybercrime. Cybercrime is highly organized. It works just like a business. Just like a business, it's got a hierarchy, it's got distribution channels, marketing, sales, technical guys running the technical things, someone cashing in, someone moving the money, a CEO that is everyone reports to, deputies, the whole shebang. If you want to know more about it, you can read like a lot of material that's been published about it. You can even look at my presentation from last year, but there's like better stuff out there. When you're talking about the attack, and this is going to be very quickly because you're familiar with it, it's the usual stuff. Okay, web, email, open services. Targeted attacks are usually going to be carried with like custom Trojans. I'm not going to talk about the infection vector, the attack vector. It's pretty much run-of-the-mill. Bots, botnets, rootkits. You know the drill. If you have any questions, by the way, just shoot. This is how it looks like in terms of a cyber crime attack. This is a mapping of the effect that a single cybercrime server had in terms of infecting legitimate websites. Okay, we got hold of the data that was on a criminally operated server. We mapped out all the infection vectors, all right, all the sites that were broken into, legitimate sites that were broken into, and gave bots back to that command control. And this is how it looked like. Since we're looking for money, most of the focus was on areas where there's money. Western Europe, East, West Coast, all the hillbillies are kind of left out. Some in China, some in Japan, but again, the focus is pretty obvious. In terms of the guys running those things, we mapped out, we were able to track down about 5 or 6 major groups that were running those promotions and running those cybercrime operations, and surprisingly enough, they fit into the geographies where the attacks were happening. So we're seeing very, very high specialization in terms of language, geography, to adapt the marketing and the way to infect people. And you're going to hear a lot of social engineering and social talks, and you'll see why. This is the ammunition. Okay, This is just one example, my favorite, my personal favorite. I did a lot of research on this little fucker. This is Zeus. This is the client side where you build the Trojans. Every time you click here, and this is not rocket science, all right, you just configure it, tell it what to do, click build, bam, you've got an executable. Click build again, bam, there's another one. Completely different than the first one, with different detection rates. These things usually measure about anywhere between 20 to 45% detection across 41 different AVs, which, again, my personal opinion is AVs just don't work. This was and can be used as what you see on the screen. I'm not going to say this because it's stupid. This is the other side. You get this in two parts. All right? So this is the command control center, wizard-driven installation. Just put it on a web server. It's going to configure the database, and bam, you've got bots connecting to it. And you can drill down and do reports and send them commands and group them and do like fancy shit with it. It's going to pull out all the information that you configured the attack tool to do, the Trojan, look for credentials, for documents, whatever it is. Very easy to use. So it's not rocket science. You don't have to be a uber hacker to run this. A friend of mine had an experiment back in Israel, and he's like, let's try to do a proof of concept. He's running a class on like ethical hacking, and for in like whatever bizarre reason, after 2 days he had about 5,000 infections, like 5,000 bots under his command, and everything is like registered to his credit card number, the website, the whole thing is like, oh shit, to shut everything down. This is very effective. Okay. Defense, again, one of my favorite parts because it's very easy. We have anti-virus, malware, spyware, rootkit, Trojan. Or do we? It's not really working. Okay. Again, go to VirusTotal, look at detection rates for the latest threats. Unless they're like at least a month and a half old, it's just ridiculous. Okay. But then you say, Ian, we've got firewalls, IDSs, IPSs, stuff that catches stuff on the network. But seriously? Port 80, 443, 53 rings a bell. We saw, DNS exfiltration techniques before in the talk before. We talked about 443 SSL. Everything's encrypted. You can't see shit. You can't really stop these things with our current defense mechanisms. Oh, there's my little buddy. I was afraid I forgot it. So the defenses of cybercrime are kind of obvious and poor. Finally, getting back to my claim to fame. Cybercrime is being used to conduct cyber war. And no one's shot a missile at me yet. My God, I'm doing something wrong. Let's see how that works, okay? In order to see that, I had to go back into like ancient history, 2007, I think this is, Estonia. I just had to put this because everyone said this is like the first cyber warfare event. Because of that, it's very well documented. I'm not really going to focus too much about it because it didn't really have a kinetic effect to it, besides Lenin's, like the lone soldier thing falling or moving. Yeah, but that's mostly by civilian kind of outrage and stuff like that. The bottom line from the cyber aspect is that civilian infrastructure is targeted, and attacks were originated mostly from civilian networks. Okay, the attacks that brought down most of the internet infrastructure in Estonia did not come from Kremlin.gov.ru. Okay, it came from all sorts of civilian networks. Read about it. If you need links, just send me an email. Israel. All right. Who knows what this is? Okay, excellent. I have a buddy here. This is a nuclear reactor in Syria. This was part of Operation Orchard. Go to Wikipedia, read about it. It's very interesting because allegedly, okay, this nuclear reactor turned into this overnight, September 6th, 2007. My birthday, by the way. It's a great birthday present. Waking up and it's like, whoa, they nuked them. Yeah. Here's another picture. Okay. Before, after. What I'm missing here is the after picture, in which they completely blanked out the area. Not like Photoshop it, but like D9s, bulldozers, just flattening the area to raise any proof that there was something here before. Anyone can guess why? The burning shame. Things like this don't just blow up. Okay? Contrary to common belief. F-16s, F-15s have to fly over areas where they are seen. Israel doesn't have like stealth fighters, the fancy, American toys. They actually have to fly over a lot of open areas, drop bombs, and fly back. Why the burning shame? Because not Syria, not Lebanon, and not Turkey, over which these aircraft had to fly, it's just geography, saw any activity in the air. None of the air traffic controllers, none of the radars, nothing. So instead of buying like a fancy F-117 or something like that, just let the hacker kids do what they do. Again, a lot of reading material already posted on it. This is, again, all OS int. Some more stuff in like the Israeli area. We are seeing a lot of hacktivism going on. This was like during the CASLAD, Second Lebanon War events. This is like a call for action, civilian, organized. This is basically a botnet being built up voluntarily to be used to take down Arab websites. On the other side, a little different. AR Hack. It's a great forum for hackers that speak Arabic. It's a hacker forum by day, but a cybercrime operation by night. What do I mean? Political posting, hacktivism, blah, 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 by day. By night, buying, selling credit cards for half their price. Again, classic cybercrime operations. Selling 1,600 Visa cards, right? It's all tied in together, all right? And the hacktivism is clearly, again, Google Translate this, go to arhack. Can't remember the domain name, but Google Translate it and see how it all fits into some political agenda of someone. This is not just, I want to be patriotic today. Georgia is the most interesting, in my research personally, is the most interesting event. Why? Kinetic and cyber. Georgia was the first highly synchronized kinetic and cyber attack that we have seen in the past decade. Targets were still mostly civilian on the cyber side, and they were still launched from civilian networks, much like Estonia. In order to realize what was happening in Georgia, you have to look at how Russia works. Good old Russia. If anyone doesn't know any one of these names, just walk out. Good. All right. You must have ran into at least one of those names in your hacker life or civilian life. These are all Russia-related outposts, right, of criminal activities, of network kind of running, hosting, whatever. Some are gone, like Mikolo, which was shut down. Some were gone for some time, like RBN, and just popped up again. They moved to China and then came back to Russia. Let's take a look, just a quick look on how these guys operate, more or less. Okay, they're located all across the globe, not just in Russia. It's also Ukraine, China, U.S., Western Europe even. And again, just a quick kind of connect the dots to see how what's the interaction. HostFresh and UKR Telegroup are Atrevo is hosted by HostFresh and UKR Telegroup. Atrevo is a customer of EST Domain, which is a customer of the RBN, okay, for bulletproof hosting. The network provider for RBN are UKR Telegroup and HostFresh. HostFresh is China, UKR Telegroup in Ukraine, RBN in Russia. They are all connected, mostly the RBN, two criminal activities. Okay, definitely Mikolo, with proven track record. If you don't remember, when Mikolo was shut down, like internet is off, spam volumes across the globe dropped by 70%. There are like cute graphs where you can see just and it kept there for an amazing 3.5 weeks until it came back up. So definite criminal connection, as well as connections to the Russian government. Mikolo has been backed up by the Russian government for a long time. The actual founder is highly related to one of the government officials. RBN is basically ran by the government. I mean, they're letting them run their bulletproof hosting, and when they got too much slack from like public media, they moved to China to HostFresh, cleared their like ISNs and just AS numbers, and then just pop back in Russia, right? So this is how stuff runs in Russia in terms of government criminal ops connections. This is what was happening with Georgia. It's all started by flooding, like DDoSing the president's website, right? These are the commands that were traced back to the command control centers. That was like issuing them to all the bots around it. Just flood HTTP, TCP, and ICMP for president.gov.ge. Then the command control centers kind of disappeared, and troops started crossing the border. Just happened. Coincidence? No. Few days of silence, and then stuff started coming back again. 6 new command control servers started attacking or issuing attacks for all sorts of Georgia-related websites, mostly government and media. Okay, remember the media, affecting public opinion, blah, 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 blah. Okay? In conjunction, those 6 known publicly known, command control servers were still running their, legitimate or ongoing business, which is attacking porn sites, adult escort services, carders, gambling, web money, web gold, WMZ, and just a standard run-of-the-mill criminal operation that is known to everyone who's researching cybercrime. Connecting the dots, is it that difficult? No. It's the same command control center, fully synchronized with ground troops in Georgia, attacking or massively denying service from Georgian very high targeted websites. Moving on, Iran, URAN. We'll talk about the Twitter attack and how it relates to Iran. In 2009, DNS Twitter attack, everyone remembers, December, right? No Twitter, it's like yesterday, no Facebook. Oh my God, I have no friends. Twitter went down using a DNS hack. Someone stole the credentials to the DNS management screens for Twitter and changed the DNS stuff. Timing was just right on. We've seen protests by leadership opposition in Tehran. We've seen some UN Council decisions that didn't really fit Iran's agenda. And this is what Twitter looked like. It's like, you poke me too much, this is what I'm going to do to your Twitterverse. This is Twitter, hacked by the Iranian cyber army. Remember that name, okay? This is what came up in Google. If you Googled Twitter, can you Google Twitter? And if you try to look at the Iranian cyber army, you're not going to find much prior to like October 2009. What you are going to find is that they're actually a part of a group called ASEAN, which is an Iranian Shiite kind of hacker forum that around October created a subgroup called the Iranian Cyber Army. Now what's ASEAN? ASEAN has been doing political defacement and stuff like that for a long time. This is the same template that has been used, just with different JPEG images, on the Twitter takedown. Same HTML, same CSS, everything, just change the images. This is the same, by the way, template on both occasions. And they're available at the ASEAN forums, okay? It's part of their tools. So check out the forums, track down the Iranian cyber army, and track down ASEAN's operations. part of the forums that consists of the ASEAN and Iranian Cyber Army forums, there's a section called War Games. Okay, just training, war games, and as part of the war games, what you do is the leader or the administrator for the group issues a target. All right, this is the target for this week's, month's, whatever it is, war games, and there are very clear rules of engagement in scoring kind of methodology. All right, it's like capture the flag, but for real, but not for real. You get what I'm trying to say. There's rules. All right, the main goal is to gain data or access to like controlling systems in the attacked site, and it goes in detail up to like defacement, which is like the lowest scoring thing. All right, so this is just kind of target practice, just getting the people to be familiar with the moves and what to do. The target for the war games, this is just, again, just one example. This is the example from this thing, all right? Chester Gas. Chester Gas, again, war games. This is just practice. Is the Chester County Natural Gas Authority. Okay, anyone mention critical infrastructure? Okay, Chester County in North Carolina, by the way. It's an American target. And this is just target practice. And it goes on and on and on. And that's how basically how things operate under ASEAN and Iranian Cyber Army. Anyone remember what else happened around the 18th, September 18th? Twitter went down? No one? Nothing interesting? Nothing like major that might have made the news and made people like, oh my God, politics stuff? No? Just a little, Iranian army troops crossing the border, taking over a freaking oil well? No? Guess why? Everyone was so busy clicking on Twitter. It's like, I can't tweet. Can I tweet that I can't tweet? I can't tweet that. It's, yeah. Coincidence? Probably not. All right, here's the kinetic side of things. They just moved troops, and it's like, mine. But mine. But you want to tweet about it? Go ahead, be my guest. Yeah, not gonna happen. More recently, from the Twitter takedown was Baidu. Same MO exactly. Okay, someone got a hold somehow, Trojans, botnets, blah blah blah, of the credentials to access the DNS records for Baidu. Change it, mine. Again, same MO, same everything. Everything, by the way, is documented, or you can find a lot of leads and techniques on the ASEAN groups and the Iranian Cyber Army subgroup if you can get access to it. So just a quick kind of summary for Iran. ASEAN, classic kind of cybercrime operation. DDoS, site defacements, botnets, carding, credit cards, targeting the usual suspects. Inside ASEAN is Iranian Cyber Army, subgroup for in those forums. Iranian Cyber Army doing strategic stuff, war games, targeting U.S., China, more politically oriented or state kind of oriented targets. The connection or the border between them is almost non-existent. All right, this is crime, classic. All right, no one's arguing. I mean, throw shit at me. I'm with your back, with my back. Yeah. Iran doesn't have really friendship relationship with China for some reason. They're like really not a lot of love in that front. I'm not like a political expert, but that's just read about it. Okay, they've been giving a lot of shit to each other over the past like decade. They're not really like playing well with everyone. They're like the special kid that's always connecting the dots is pretty easy. Yeah, go ahead.
Was it then entirely coincidental that Google and Baidu went down exactly at the same time?
I don't know. and because I don't have a lot of details on the Google takedown in terms of timing and the ammo used, and as I said, it's like if I don't have data on it, I'm not going to bullshit around it. So I got hit too much with like schmooballs and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, of course. It's like asking if RBN is still online. Yeah. Yeah. China. Good old China. Promised we're not going to avoid them. Great Chinese Firewall is working pretty well. Okay, they're doing a good job and kind of an okay job considering the amount of population. Oh my God, he's got a missile already. Considering the amount of population that they have to take care of. No, go ahead. I'm like, I'll take it like a man. Just, so it's doing a kind of okay job in terms of keeping stuff going out and going in, but we'll see, you know, how good. It's kind of a proving ground for a lot of stuff because no one gives a shit if you own a system in China, like own a system in China. It's going to stay up for quite a long time. Thank you. So it's kind of a proving ground for hackers and black hats. Great bulletproof hosting. They provided the network facilities when RBN had to kind of lay low for a little bit to get all the media attention off, and that facility stayed there. So it's very, you know, HostFresh and those guys are still very in business. January 12th, China. January 12th, Google goes out and says, we've been hacked by the Chinese. I just got to read this officially because otherwise I'm going to fuck it up. In mid-December, we detected a highly sophisticated and targeted attack on our corporate infrastructure originating from China that resulted in the theft of intellectual property, blah, 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 blah. Okay? This is a senior VP in Google announcing that they've been having fun with China. Same goes for Adobe. All right. Once Google came out, you know, and kind of out of the closet and said we've been having it, yeah, up the, you know what? Adobe said that the same thing. More research about 40 companies that got nailed really hard in the Chinese, alleged Chinese attack. Again, there's not a lot. There's kind of sketchy details on it. I've heard like a pretty solid presentation during the first conference that was basically read out from paper that probably the Google attorneys wrote. Kind of funny. But bottom line, it was the same MO, right, for all the companies. An IE 0-day that just slammed right into Google, Adobe, 40 other companies, put a rootkit in it on the computers, reporting that back through DNS mainly, which is fortunately for Google pretty well monitored. Okay, in Google. In the rest of the companies, almost zero recording. I mean, who logs DNS data? No one. All right. The only problem is that this entire attack, this entire MO, is classic cybercrime in terms of attack vector, infection vector, persistent vector, everything you want. Again, targeting finance, technology, media, and chemical. That was the kind of the flip side. What the U.S. responded with is, and this is like an official U.S. government response, we look to the Chinese government for an explanation. Okay. Someone was playing in your playground and they shot at us. You're responsible for it. The ability to operate with confidence in cyberspace is critical, blah, blah, blah. Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. All right, they're blaming a country for the attack of specific companies, which was conducted using criminal MOs. I love the Chinese. All right, the Chinese reaction wasn't me. I'm just cutting it down to like what the essence of it. The U.S. is like, "Well, we're looking to you." Blah, blah, blah. Wasn't me. Why? Because it's easy to say it wasn't me. Okay. There's been a quote, and I can tweet later the source for this, from a professor in a university that worked in one of the two universities from which the command control sensors ran in China. Basically saying, you know, we know our network is fucked, quoting my friend Joe. We know our network sucks. And we've been, you know, a target over and over and over again for criminals. Breaking the network, routing, you know, hosts, and using them for criminal operations. This was not related directly to this whole Google China investigation. This was just kind of off the beaten path. But if you connect the two events, you realize why the Chinese have plausible deniability. Wasn't me. Look, the professor said it's, you know, they've been screwed so many times, and they actually link it back to criminal things. A classier move that China actually took later on wasn't me. It was coming from the U.S. Prove that now. Which, again, you can do that. You can prove that the command control centers were connected somehow to IP addresses. Why? Because geography doesn't matter. I mean, seriously, blaming China, it's like blaming North Korea for the, you know, DDoS during 4th of July. They didn't do it. From the Chinese, from the Republic of China, this is perfect because they get plausible deniability. The connection between the state and crime is fairly easy. Okay, everything is running from bulletproof hosting networks. It's a win-win situation, and you can just do whatever the fuck you want to do. Okay, and everything is still running smoothly. So let's take a quick look at the future, or you know, my predictions on what's going on. So Oracle, what do you see? Woo. What is this? OLPC. Thank you very much. An OLPC is basically a dumbed-down laptop running an operating system with basically no protection on it, which is shipped to Africa. Okay. Now, what happens to a, you know, standard operating system with not a lot of security software on it or protections? It gets infected. What happens when one computer gets infected? Boop, 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 boop. Botnet. All right. So if I want to run like a big-ass botnet, just hand out free computers to third world countries that don't have enough money to spend on security software for those computers. Okay? So one of the reasons why this whole project is not really taking off as fast as it should have been is concerns over computer security. Right? You can easily create a big-ass botnet just by handing out laptops. What are the kind of weapons of mass destruction of the future? On the cyber front, it still is connectivity. The more connectivity you have, and I said Israel geographically is the only case where size doesn't matter, the more you have, the bigger you are, right? The more power you have. So the more connectivity you have, whether it be in your country or in other countries where you can get access to and control systems, the more power you have to conduct cyber attacks. Last but not least, if you're talking about connectivity, cloud, right? Cloud is a classic case where you can put shit on, you know, anonymous, whatever networks with tons of resilience, tons of redundancy, tons of connectivity, and just abuse it to do stuff, right? A lot is going into looking at what's going on in the clouds in terms of cybercrime and operations like that. Track it. Look out for it. Quickly summarizing, I got 2 minutes left. We've seen the good and the bad. All right. The good was the kind of training and formalization of cyber on the state level, on the nation level, getting more and more people to the good side and researching it. Blah 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 blah. The bad side is that the commercial side of it is still rocking. All right. You can buy tools like Zeus and Mariposa and other very good, you know, well-developed, supported crimeware utilities that are going to fly basically under the radar of most traditional security protections and be very efficient. The ugly is always when good meets bad. It's government's trying to cut corners, all right? Why should I do a lot of training and development and research when I can just buy this shit, all right? Why do I need to spend a lot of money and, again, resources and intelligence over, you know, attacking and conceiving an attack vector when I can just rent a botnet and DDoS Estonia or Georgia or whatever it is? It's even better because my relationship with, you know, RBN, if we're taking Russia, is kind of a, you know, friendly. So I'm just going to need you to use your botnet for a few seconds. All right, you can keep running. How do we solve this, or you know, why aren't we that fucked? Because a lot has been going on the cybercrime side. Cyber war, it's, you know, we're fucked for now. But on cybercrime, law enforcement actually started to realize that, you know what, the borders, you can't really put, you know, this whole interweb thingy is kind of hard to close down to jurisdiction and borders. So there's a lot of advancement going on in terms of cooperation and information sharing on the law enforcement side, all right? If you look at the Mariposa investigation, you'll see that the FBI has commended the Slovenian police for arresting the guy that sold Mariposa to the Spanish guys. It's like, what the fuck? What does the FBI has to do with, you know, a Spanish botnet sold in Slovenia? Interesting stuff to read, by the way. So once we start fixing the cybercrime, kind of, you know, how do we protect against it and how do we work in terms of nations and states, then we can start addressing cyber war and set rules and set regulations. One example which we can work on is nuclear treaties. All right, we're talking about weapons that can take down a country, that can wipe the entire population, that can disconnect Estonia from the internet and just shut it down because it's all running on the internet. Right? Once we set rules for that and learn from, you know, the successes and the failures of trying to set rules for nuclear treaties, then we can start addressing the cyber front. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them now. My time is almost up, but I'll take a couple, and my contact details are above. Yes? Sorry?
Many of the so-called crimes on the statute books in most countries already exist. Theft, fraud, misrepresentation. When people are prosecuted, they're not prosecuted for cyber crimes. They're prosecuted for standard crimes committed using technology. So cyber crime is a misnomer in the same way that cyber war is. In wars, people die. Apart from the example of that Syrian site, which is questionable, I've never actually seen anybody say, someone has died from a cyber war. Cyber crime, yes, it's an issue, but it's wrong to label it so. It doesn't gain anything, because the problem is when you prosecute people, they're being prosecuted for theft. If you're carding, that's theft, misrepresentation. It's not a cyber crime. Cyber crime doesn't exist. That's what the police forces in many countries say.
Well, the police forces in many countries focus on the lowest hanging fruit of cyber crime. I haven't seen like a cyber crime leader, group leader, being arrested or prosecuted. All the prosecutions, again, that I have seen and read about were of the foot soldiers. The guys that were doing the money muling, the actual carding. Right? Carding by itself, by the way, is not a cybercrime operation. It's part of a bigger organization. Someone is responsible for this. And police forces have been focusing on those lowest hanging fruit. That's again, my view on cybercrime. They've been having a very, very hard job getting to the guys actually running this. If I've used to work with the high-tech crime unit in the Netherlands. I've worked with law enforcement in the UK, in Israel, in the US. They know who these guys are, basically. They just can't prosecute them because it's hard to connect. On the war front, I almost agree with you. You're not going to see a lot of people die because they don't have Twitter or Facebook. But if you take, for example, taking down a power grid system, you can definitely see people die because they don't have oxygen in the pumps in the hospital. If a power plant melts down because some PLC was reprogrammed, can definitely see people dying because of, you know, radiation exposure or something like that. It's not to the amount of, you know, bombing the shit out of a city, but it still is related to state versus state, which in my dictionary is war or warfare. But again, it's all arguable. I see your point. Any more questions? Okay, I'm going to be here all day and night and tomorrow